Apple is about to do something that is going to screw over every creator like me who uses Patreon. Now, if you don't know what Patreon is, from my perspective, it is a way that allows you, the community, to support my channel through regular pledges, whether that be annual subscriptions or monthly pledges. Patreon take a percentage cut of that, of which I am more than happy to pay. That percentage cut is 8%. Now, the way this has worked up until now is it didn't matter how you actually did it with regards to the platform you used. You could use an iOS device, an Android device, PC, Linux, whatever you wanted. You could sign up and Patreon would take their 8% and I would receive the rest. Apple, though, is forcing Patreon now to move on to their own in-house payment system that will levy an additional 30% charge on the fees that is going to be taken. Now, just to be crystal clear, this 30% charge is not going to Patreon. It is going directly to Apple as a result of processing their payment fees. As of today, right now, Patreon are using their own payment processing system that doesn't incur these charges, and as a result, the creator was only charged 8% for Patreon's platform fee, but Apple have decided that they literally want to start taking the food out of creators' mouths and instead force Patreon to use Apple's payment system, which is going to levy an additional 30%, which means creators are going to be charged a total of 38% with Apple and Patreon fees put together. Now, the first thing to understand on this is it doesn't affect existing Patreons. This will only affect people who sign up to Patreon via the iOS app from November. It doesn't affect people who are Patreons today. If you have already signed up to me or another creator via Patreon on an iOS app already, don't worry, you are not affected, we are not affected. This will be new Patreons from the 1st of November onwards. Now, what is highly concerning to me in this as a creator is this acceptance from Patreon, but also the likes of the tech press that are not covering this in detail, that this is just going to happen. There's no question that the Patreon system that they've offered is going to make it at least less of a problem for creators, because that will just automatically levy the charge onto iOS users. However, my real concern about that is the transparency of it. I cannot imagine for one moment Apple is going to allow Patreon users to put a message via the iOS app saying this fee includes an additional 30% charge that goes to Apple. If you don't want to pay this 30% charge, you can choose to sign up to this creator via the Patreon website or via an Android device. There is no way that Apple is going to be happy with that message being put on the Patreon app by creators, and what will happen here is that basically there will become a two-tier system where iOS users will look at this and think, oh, that creator's charging a lot of money, I'm not going to join, without the visibility of the additional 30% charge that is actually being taken by Apple. Now, personally, I feel Patreon need to add more options than they have already. It is good giving the creator the option, but I do feel that Patreon should be going as far as saying the creator has the ability to not only choose who pays the 30%, but choose whether me as a creator want to accept signups via iOS at all. I personally now have a fundamental issue with the way Apple is behaving. As a long-time Apple user, I've even got rid of my iPhone. I've moved to Android because I'm not willing to support this company, and I feel I should have the option to be able to not only choose who pays, but also choose if I want to accept Patreon signups via the iOS app at all. That way, I can say iOS users, sorry, no, or direct them to the website. What is concerning in this is Jack did say that the indication from Apple has been if they were to do that, that they could kick the Patreon app off the platform altogether. I understand for Patreon, this puts them in a very difficult position, but the reality is we are being blackmailed here. There is no other term for it, and it is unacceptable that Apple is going to take 30% of the charge for offering nothing. Apple's payment service is not needed. Patreon have their own payment service, and all Apple are doing is a cash grab on creators. There appears to be really very little noise being made about this in the tech press, and there is this acceptance of it is what it is, and that really needs to change. There needs to be noise made not only at Apple, but noise made with regulators as well, so they understand that what Apple is doing here is literally daylight robbery. Now, the simplest analogy on this for me is as follows. There are two buskers walking down the high street and they come across a gentleman playing music, and he is fantastic. They both decide to throw him a fiver. Both take the money out their pocket and throw it into the bucket. However, when the busker looks in the bucket, he only sees an additional £8.50. That is because one of the two friends had an iPhone in his pocket. That is literally what is happening here. Apple are skimming a 30% charge off the top simply because they can, simply because you are an Apple user. I cannot be an Apple user, yet they are going to still take the money. Now, I have one last message on this from me personally to Apple. I have been an iPhone user and a Mac user for a very long time. In fact, I've been an iPhone user in the UK before they were officially available over here. I imported one from the US, allowing me to use it in the UK before you even released it. I have had not every iPhone, but at least every other iPhone, and I had, up until today, my iPhone 13 Pro Max. I'm a person that always bought the biggest, the top-end phone that lasted me a few years. That, though, is my last iPhone. I have decided it's time up. I am no longer supporting you with this kind of behavior. I packed it away yesterday. I have moved to Samsung. I bought an S24 Ultra, and I am now permanently transitioning myself away from Apple devices. I am not going to support a company that behaves in this manner. Whilst your products may be very good, your behavior is frankly shocking, and as a result of that, I am going to vote with my wallet, and you have lost a customer. You won't care. It won't affect you greatly, but I hope enough people take this stance that eventually you may realize that the things you do, not just in the hardware, not just in the OS, but in the wider world, have a very real impact on your customers. Anyways, this was my rant. I hope this situation gets picked up more by the press. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my existing Patreons out there. You don't need to do anything. Don't worry. It's fine. However, for new Patreons, if you're going to sign up, don't use iOS. Go to the website. Use an Android phone. Don't pay this Apple 30% levy. And as I've said already, my real concern is most people are probably not going to even know about this levy because Apple are going to want to try and hide this as much as they can. Anyway, that's it for me on this one. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.